Hello, Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity, and today we're going to talk about a new term that was just introduced in this, it's not new, but it was introduced in this particular article in relation to the pandemic and how much it is very clear, despite what public health is not educated and despite people on Twitter, that this was a pandemic of people with poor lifestyle choices. Does it mean that people who did everything right didn't have bad things happen to them? Absolutely not. But to deny that our lifestyle choices did not have an impact on COVID cases, illnesses, hospitalizations, deaths, is to stick our head in the sands and be completely susceptible for the next time something like this hits. And the term used in this particular article is syndemic. It was a combination of our poor lifestyle choices and a respiratory viral infection that was very susceptible or took heavy advantage of our poor choices. And this is not something, I've certainly promoted this. There are people that have promoted it, but there are still people out there, and Twitter is still a very active place when it comes to COVID. And you suggest for 1 second that people's lifestyle choices could have had an impact, and everybody's all up in arms saying, well, that's just not true. And at this point, we cannot deny that our lifestyle choices have the critical factor in COVID outcomes. There's just no arguing it anymore. Whether or not people choose to make changes is up to them, but from a society public health standpoint, we need to educate people that they are responsible for what happens to them. One person recently on Twitter even went so far as to suggest that when you point out that lifestyle changes play a role, that you're being somewhat of a fascist, and I didn't understand that at all, but that's how bad it's been with people who don't want to admit that our lifestyle choices play a role. So 4 things that were pointed out as playing a huge, there's a lot of little ones, certainly vitamin D is on the list, but physical activity, diabetes, smoking, and obesity. Physical activity alone is now an accepted risk factor by the CDC for COVID deaths, period. We can't argue that anymore. Something as simple as getting on your ass off the couch and moving can lower your risk of dying from COVID. It can't be clearer than that. And yet, that is still not something that we have promoted. If everybody in the past 3 years had just started being more active, not only would we have seen less of an outcome with COVID, we would have seen drops in cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, everything. And rather that instead we focused all this effort on masking and vaccination, and we've realized that masking has a pretty small effect. Vaccination, certainly lots of controversy, at the most a bump initially and then a drop after. It hasn't really fixed anything in the long run. The only thing that was going to change the trajectory and your risk in the long run were the choices that you make. And it's all an individual decision. The information is certainly out there. There's been study after study after study that confirms that these choices that we make and our health status is of critical importance for SARS-CoV-2 and any respiratory virus that we make, or even bacterial infection that we come across. Identifying this as a syndemic will help society understand what we need to do to prepare for the next one. It's not about having more masks. It's not about more lockdowns. It's not about better vaccines. It's not about better drugs. It's about preparing our health so that we are ready for the next time, because there will be a next time. And maybe next time it will be even more devastating to those of us with poor health choices and conditions. So, as always, I'll post a link to this particular article in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you think needs information, and subscribe to the channel.